When an architect has an opportunity to design a home in a truly challenging location, well then, something spectacular can emerge, much like obsidian, which is a naturally formed volcanic glass created under extreme conditions.
South African homes have truly come into their own over the last few decades. Generic imitations have made way for modern masterpieces and character-filled spaces. Finest Homes explores these creations, talking to the visionaries who are bringing them to life. Join us as we explore some of these spaces, showcasing the architecture, interior design, and the landscape design.
I'm your host, Balisa Dembe, and this is Finest Homes. In today's episode of Finest Homes, I visit the exclusively residential neighborhood of Clifton at the base of Lion's Head. With views to dream of, it is also the perfect setting for today's feature house. A multi-storied home nestled into a steep site and brought to life by visionary architecture firm SAOTA. I'm meeting with principal architect Philippe Fauchier to guide me through this layered and impressive design.
Hi, Polly. Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Cecile and Boyd were responsible for the interior architecture and decoration. Even though the site has amazing views, they wanted this home to have a mountain house feel, to have a connection to Cape Town, and thus a strong sense of place. The design team wanted the bottom level to feel grounded and rooted against the mountain rock with dark tones of lava. As one moves upwards in the home, the color palette gets lighter. Philippe, what an incredible home. What was the client's brief?
So this was an interesting project because it's the second project that we're doing for this particular client. We've done a project for them in Plettenberg Bay as well. So we knew them quite well, and really the project was driven by the zoning scheme at the time. And in this part of the world, the land is relatively constricted, but you're allowed quite a lot of verticality. And we had the idea of, instead of creating a space that feels a little bit like a small apartment block, to break the spaces up and in fact bring some landscaping into the mid-levels, almost conceptually like it was on this foothill of this mountain before anyone had built something. So meeting with the client, we discussed the idea that the lower part of the building would be used as a separate unit that they can rent out. And the client is a food stylist, so she was interested in using this space maybe for courses or food events, which was quite interesting in itself. And that's why this portion of the building is completely separated from the rest and it can function independently. So the house had to accommodate a family. And as I mentioned, the apartment's a separate unit. The level above us is a level for the kids. So there are 3 bedrooms there. And the level above that is really the main entertainment space, which opens up to a pool. And then above that, the main bedroom, like a separate suite.
Yeah. You've mentioned that you had a relationship prior with the client. And after you were given that brief, how then did you see the brief come to life?
Well, as I mentioned, the first step was just responding to the zoning scheme. And this is Clifton, so every square meter counts. So the first thing is just to maximize the rights on the land and to try and utilize the most of it because the land is so expensive. And from there, we really actually went through a process of opening up the building towards the light and towards the views, but then also breaking up the building's volumes to make it a much softer street facade and integrate landscaping into the project.
Walk me through the layout of the home.
So on the arrival, we have a small staff accommodation, we've got a garage, and then basically the entrance lobby. And then a lift brings you up to this space, which is essentially the guest level or separate suite that can be used by guests or someone else. And then the level above that is an interesting one because that's where we introduce the garden and actually an extra entertainment space for the guests, from where one can then take a secondary lift to the main entertainment space, past the kids level, and then right to the top to the main bedroom.
And the eclectic artwork as well is so cool to see. Very different vibes, eh?
So Pali, this is the third floor of the building. Here we've got 3 bedrooms and again their own entertainment and kitchenette area. We worked very closely with a very good interior architect and decorator who worked very closely with us on the project. And you can actually start seeing here how the building is obviously more elevated over the ocean. And here we had to be very careful of solar heat gain. So you will notice these vertical slats that actually just help ameliorate the sunset, because one of the best things about Clifton is having the sunset over the ocean, but it's also one of the toughest things from an environmental perspective.
Philip, that is so interesting to hear. And something else that I've picked up moving through the home is the floor-to-ceiling sliders, truly inviting you to the outside.
Absolutely. So all the spaces open up completely to the view. But it also makes it possible to really flow outside onto the terraces and really enjoy these fantastic kind of 180-degree views over the Atlantic Ocean. In this specific case, what was interesting, you'll remember that the level that we came from now, the garden terrace, in time, these trees would actually grow through this terrace. So even this level, when you look out, you'll see the leaves and the branches of the trees coming from the level below.
A very interesting way to invite the greenery into your ocean view. Stay with us as after the break, we move up another level to the main living area. In today's episode of Finest Homes, I'm visiting a multi-leveled house in Clifton, designed by award-winning architecture firm SAOTA. Before the break, I met up with principal architect Philippe Fauchier, exploring the first 2 levels of this magnificent home. As we move up in levels, the house seems to open itself up towards the light. This is thanks to the clever interior architecture and design of the Cecile and Boyd's team, who worked hand in hand with the architects. As an alternative to the lift, the stairways are a visual treat. Moving from one floor to the next is a tactile experience, thanks to the choice in flooring, wall finishes, and the owner's eclectic African art collection. Yeah. You know, Philippe, out of all of the floors that we visited so far, this truly gives a sense of warmth and family.
Yes, exactly. This is the space where the family really comes together, and when they're entertaining, people come together here. And this space is basically orientated towards the west. So we have fantastic views down towards Clifton, but also towards the 12 Apostles. And the layout's actually quite simple. It kind of goes from a more private space at the back here, where we've got a television. So this is a really cozy space with a fireplace. And then it becomes more formal as you move into the view. And just in terms of getting light into the space, morning light, we bring some morning light into the space through the courtyard, and also ventilation, which is important for the space. And then in the zoning scheme, we were allowed a little bit of space that we used for mezzanine study. We've arranged it in such a way that the kitchen is tucked away underneath the mezzanine, and that is connected with a bridge back towards the main staircase.
Now, with the view being a major drawing card when it comes to coastal homes, how did that dictate the orientation of the home?
Okay, so we're basically building on the foothill of the mountain, and we had fairly limited options in terms of the direction that the building is oriented. So we're kind of facing directly west towards the ocean, which is the more dramatic view. And of course, we opened up the corners so that one can kind of widen your perspective when you arrive at this level, especially. But with that comes some challenges, because we have the sun setting over the water and quite severe western light in the Cape. So we had to introduce blinds, a series of blinds that really filter that light and make it comfortable inside the space. And on the low level where we introduced the slats, of course, in this case, the delight of the space is that you have an unobstructed horizon line, and we didn't want to bring slats into that and kind of agitate that horizon line. So we use vertical roll down blinds to take care of the most of the light, and that filters it and makes it a comfortable space.
And how have you been able to separate the public and the private spaces?
Well, the spaces flow into one another. In this case, of course, we wanted to make it feel quite comfortable, whether it's just a single person or a couple here, or whether one is entertaining here. So it has a degree of flexibility. The space can be used by a number of people or just a small group of people. And that actually also became important when dealing with the volume. You wanted the space to be large enough, but still feel intimate enough in certain spaces.
Absolutely. After the break, we delve deeper into the details that makes this house a finest home. In today's episode of Finest Homes, I'm visiting a magnificent property in Clifton that overlooks the Atlantic Ocean. A house that came about thanks to a team of award-winning creatives. I met up with the principal architect on this project, Philippe of SAOTA. Before the break, we meandered through the different levels of the home, soaking up the intricate design and considered layout that speaks to the owner's needs. Cecile and Boyd were called on when it came to the interior architecture and design, adding another layer to this remarkable house. I noticed a dramatic change from the ground level to the top floor. Starting out with a dark color palette, each floor appears lighter and brighter as you move upwards, ending in a white and airy main bedroom on the 5th floor. The design team has linked the different floors by using the same kind of materials on all levels. It is through the change in color, tone, and texture that each level has been able to claim its own identity. The main bedroom sits lightly on top of the structure, as if it's floating in a white cloud. The room enjoys spectacular views while boasting a similarly impressive ensuite. With the home being nestled on an incredibly steep slope, what challenges did you experience?
Well, the first one was structural, because we had to dig quite deep into the mountain and really stabilize it, because on this particular project we weren't allowed to use ground anchors. So that was probably one of the biggest practical challenges, just to get out of the ground and really to create the space of the house.
What materials were selected for the exterior?
The philosophy for us was to express the lower part of the building almost as part of the mountain. So we used heavy stone, relatively dark. And as one progresses through the levels, the building becomes lighter, almost as if you're connecting earth with sky. So that was reflected. So the lower level is mostly stone, and then we go through various tones of really a textured coating that protects the building from the harsh environment as well. And as you come to the top, the building is actually relatively light, and we used white aluminium cladding.
How then did those materials translate to the interior of the home?
We always try and bring the materials from the outside in. So in all cases, we try to continue the floor finishes on the outside as well. So use quite robust finishes. So it's not a very precious space. It's not like, you can't come into this space even when you come out of the pool. So in virtually every level, we continued the inside finish to the outside. But in most cases, actually, because the building is so upright, you're more or less surrounded by glass. So this, we clad in a similar kind of aluminium system as we had with the door frames.
And landscaping has been used in a very effective way.
For us, this was important for this project, because I think it's about bringing landscaping back onto this part of the land. So if you imagine what this slope must have been like before people started building here, to create opportunity for indigenous landscaping on virtually every level is so important for us. So this, it almost creates another little ecosystem up here, invite bird life and insects to all the levels of the project. So for us, that was actually one of the key things. And it's actually quite unusual. We're sitting on the 4th floor of a building, and we're surrounded by greenery on both sides, and kind of also creates a sense of feeling nestled between the neighbors.
How have you been able to make a room this big still feel cozy?
It's a good question. Obviously, had it not been for the textures and the materiality of the space, it can very easily start feeling like a cafeteria. And this is tricky because you want it to feel comfortable when it's just a single person or a couple here, but also when there are more people and when people are entertaining, it needs to be comfortable in that scenario as well. So in this space, for instance, although it feels lovely and cozy now, of course, you can host quite a large party up here, opening up all the sliding doors, really experiencing the space all the way from the back courtyard. Everything opens up to the front towards the ocean, really kind of creating a larger space. So we love this idea that the buildings need to respond for all those in all those scenarios and actually be comfortable when there's a large group of people here as well. And the key for us was really in working very closely with the interior architect and choosing materials that brings a sense of texture and warmth. I do think that this idea of cold, sterile interiors, especially in a space like this, just can't work.
A space we haven't talked about yet is that upstairs master bedroom. I feel like I was in a cloud.
Exactly. So conceptually, of course, that is where the building in our minds connect with the sky. And the room is mostly white and very, very light shades of timber, which relates to that concept. And on that bedroom level, you get a sense of calmness. It's a really light space. And although it's not the largest space, which was largely predicated by the zoning scheme, we couldn't make it too big. We tried to make it feel as open and expansive as possible. You'll notice that most of the colors are light. So this is really like bleached driftwoods and white paint, and also, again, that white aluminium cladding. And from that space, of course, again, you can open the doors onto another planted terrace, which we introduced, again, adding a water body that connects visually to the ocean. So that all became part of that experience and really creating a completely separate unit up there that the parents can enjoy while the family or guests are using the rest of the building.
And with SAOTA being an internationally acclaimed architecture firm, how does the client brief meet up with that of an architect?
For us, the client is a very important part of the process. And in fact, we pride ourselves that we can kind of feel the presence and the character of our clients in each and every one of our projects. So, once you started thinking and talking about the context, the physical context of a site, whether it's in Geneva or Lagos, we start looking at the cultural context. But then for me, the third layer is really talking about the client and the role that the client plays. So we work very closely with our clients and we guide them through the processes. And working closely with them also gives the project a specific character, in my opinion, which enhances the project. And that's where it's really wonderful.
This is the epitome of indoor-outdoor living. I can't imagine this ever gets old.
Exactly. I think one of the lovely things is that you can open up the whole space. The doors actually slide outside of the volume of the building, so you can open it up really from side to side, again, maximizing that horizon line. And what's so wonderful, especially when the weather is nice like today, you can really leave it open, the whole day. And then the setting, you have the beaches below, you can see people swimming, but also what I personally love about it is that you have some context. So you see a little bit of the mountain rolling down on this side and then the coastline and the 12 Apostles that side. So very often with some of these projects, you can't just get a kind of a blue background, blue horizon. And at night especially, it's basically just dark. And here it's lovely because you have a little bit of the action of Clifton downstairs and the road and the beaches. So it really creates this kind of nestled atmosphere on the site.
Absolutely. And that brings us to one of my favorite features, the infinity pool.
It is a good one. We tried to match the color of the floor of the pool and the lining of the pool with the color of the sand, because as you can imagine, as the clouds move around, the color of the water changes. And as far as possible, we tried to match that. So on a day like today, you'll see that the colors of the water actually matches the colors that you see on Clifton, that azure color. And then on a practical level, it avoids the kind of hindrance of a balustrade to stop people from falling over the edge. Because remember, we're about 5 stories up now. So this pool really has a double function, and it's a lovely place to take a swim. And then also when you do swim to the edges, you kind of look back towards the mountain, which is quite remarkable.
Stunning indeed. And finally, in your opinion, what makes for a finest home?
I think all homes are different. Homes are very personal. People trust us with a lot when they commission us to work with them on their home, and we've been doing it for long enough to know that it's a huge responsibility and that we take quite seriously. But we also have fun with our clients. So I think very often the spirit of the clients and the character of the clients come out in our projects. And I'm not sure there's really a set of rules or guides that one should follow, but certainly in our case, we very often like this idea that buildings can open up towards views, flexibility of spaces, opening up doors, living very close to nature and bringing nature into the experience on every level. And of course, one must, as a start, obviously take advantage of the best aspects of the site and take advantage of that and make that part of the experience for the people using the house.
Well, Philippe, thank you so much for having me. This was truly outstanding.
Pleasure. It was a pleasure being here.